seas and lifespans, ebbing, flowing. Past and future merge as one. Mountain rulers, coming, going. Seasons future, seasons gone. Badger warriors from the shades, stand beside me, guide my paw. O wise lords and gentle maids, restrain my rage, preserve our law.
Hail fellow travelers, Tim from Secret Fire Books here with another Redwall review. This time I'm talking about Salamandastron. This is book 5 in publication order and book 8 in chronological order, which would make it a direct prequel to the original Redwall. Now what's that you say? Confusing? I don't know what you're talking about. This is a very simple, straightforward, uncomplicated series of books for children.
I mean, they're children's books. Children's books. They're the most confusing books I've ever read in my entire life.
This book does actually hold a very strong bit of nostalgia for me because it is in fact the first Redwall book that I ever read when I was a kid. I remember very clearly I was 10 years old. I went to the library looking specifically for Redwall books because at the time I was obsessed with the Redwall cartoon. And they didn't have the original Redwall at that time, but what they did have was Salamandastron. And all I had to see was that awesome Troy Howell cover with this badger in knightly armor. Got a sly-looking fox down there with some evil-looking rats holding spears. And then if you turn it around, we have some weasels with swords and daggers and spears. I thought to myself, you know what? That looks awesome. That looks like my jam. I'm bringing this one home. And I did. And I absolutely devoured this book within a few days. And weirdly enough, that's actually the only time I ever read this book. So coming back to it, I had a lot of expectations. And so did it live up to all those warm, fuzzy childhood memories of mine? Kinda, but we'll get to that. First, let me give you the story. The ancient mountain fortress of Salamandastron has seen many, many generations of badger lords, the fearsome, dauntless warriors of their kind, and none more fearsome or dauntless than Earthstripe the Strong. Lord Earthstripe is well known throughout the land for his strength and courage, respected by his loyal army of hares, and beloved by all who hold his favor. Except for his rebellious teenage daughter, Mara. One day, Mara runs away from her mountain home to join up with a gang of weasels, and as she soon finds out, her new friends might not have the best interests for her in mind. I know, shocking, in a Redwall book of all things. They are, in fact, members of an army led by the weasel warlord Farrago the Assassin, who intends to wage war on Salamandastron, kill Mara's father, Earthstripe, and take for himself the vast treasure that he believes is hidden away in the fortress. Now, after barely escaping with her life, Mara must find a way home amidst the chaos of war. Meanwhile, a young squirrel named Samkim from Redwall Abbey has set out on a mission to retrieve the Sword of Martin, which was recently stolen by 2 deserters from Farrago's army. Little does Samkim know that his path and Mara's are about to meet, and the destinies of these 2 youngsters have been inexplicably bound to not just the Sword of Martin, but to the fate of Salamandastron. Honestly, even though my own personal impressions of this book are pretty high, I think anyone else who reads this would find it to be a very mixed bag. This is really kind of an awkward entry in the Redwall series, realistically speaking. There are a lot of peaks and valleys. The valleys are pretty darn low and pretty boring, but the peaks are astronomically high. In fact, I'd say that the best parts of this book are some of the best parts in the series that I've read so far. At the very least, it's way more engaging than Mariel of Redwall. I feel like after the weird cutesy baby shenanigans that was going on in that book, this is definitely a step in the right direction. This is a straight up war story. It is a story of war and conquest in the world of Redwall. And I know I'm playing entirely to type here, but my favorite part of Salamandastron was Salamandastron. It's this massive pitched siege battle going on the slopes of this mountain fortress between Lord Earthstripe and his relatively small army of hares from the Long Patrol, who have a very, very slight home field advantage over the invading forces, these hundreds and hundreds of evil foxes and weasels and rats from Farrago's army. We get to see both the micro and the macro of this pitched battle. We get to zoom in multiple times on different characters and see how they are personally handling this war. And we also get to zoom out and see all the strategizing and the flow of battle going back and forth. And so it makes for a varied... It serves up the action in a lot of different ways from different angles, and I really appreciated that because I do love action. It's the thing that I look forward to the most when I read these kind of stories, but it's not just constant up close and personal battles. It is spaced out enough throughout the story where you can breathe, and so when the next big fight scene picks up, you're ready for it, and your excitement just skyrockets because yes, we're back into it, boys. We're back into the thick of it. Rip and tear, rip and tear. I will say that even though he's not technically the main character of this story, the best character in this book is Earthstripe the Strong. He doesn't really have his own personal character arc, but his personality is just so big and bold right out of the gate that I couldn't help but fall in love with this character. He is incredibly bold, incredibly strong and brave and resourceful. He sticks up for what he believes no matter what. He is very loyal to his friends and loved ones, and when the people he loves are put in danger, he can be very vengeful, and I just love characters like that. So yeah, once again, Badgers continue to be the best characters in this series. I was also genuinely surprised in how much I enjoyed the hares in this story. Usually the hare characters are kind of just copy-pastes of Basil from book 1. For some reason, Jacques just decided that every member of that species is going to talk and act the same way. But the hares in Salamandastron actually have quite a bit of varied personalities going on. The members of the Long Patrol, Earthstripe's army, are very interesting. They have their own personalities, their own wants and desires and dreams, their own outlooks on this war. And I was very interested in seeing how these characters bounce off each other, how they bicker and banter, how they joke with each other, this kind of soldiery camaraderie that they have with one another. It was really charming, and when the action starts up, I was genuinely nervous that some of these characters might die because they're just so likable. And the villains in this part of the story are really great as well. Vasigo, oh my gosh, that's an entirely different assassin. Farrago, the assassin, makes for a very interesting big bad. He has a lot of charisma. He's described as being very charming and always in control of the situation. He's very level-headed, more so than a lot of the other villains that we've gotten in this story. He's always cool, calm, and collected. He's always in charge, in control, and he's also very intimidating, and he keeps his soldiers in line. He's almost like the best version of Clooney from the original Redwall. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if, when he was writing this, Brian Jacques looked at Clooney and thought, yeah, I need to do that character again, but better this time. But unfortunately, the Battle of Salamandastron is but one of multiple plot lines in this book. And that right there is my first major complaint. There is just way too much going on in this one. It's not even the biggest book in the series, but there are just so many plot lines. And a lot of them are not only boring, but pointless. There are entire story arcs and character arcs that you could just erase from this book, and it would change nothing aside from the page count. Not only do we have the villains and the heroes' points of view at the battle at Salamandastron, we also have the point of view of Earthstripe's daughter, Mara, and her hare friend, whose name I can't remember now that I'm trying to think of it, them trying to find their way home after escaping from Farrago's army. We also have the point of view of the two stoats who deserted from Farrago's army and killed one of the monks at Redwall Abbey and stole the Sword of Martin. We also have the point of view of Samkim and his mole friend, whose name I also don't remember, as they're tracking down these stoats trying to get the sword back. And as if all of that wasn't complicated enough, there's also this pandemic going on at Redwall Abbey. This deathly sickness breaks out that starts killing off the animals one by one. And so this otter named Thrug and his little mouse friend, whose name I also can't remember, guys, they are just... Jake's put so many characters in his book, I can't be expected to remember them all. They set off on a quest to find this magical MacGuffin-y flower that can be ground up and made into a medicine that will supposedly heal this sickness. And so that plot line branches off into 2 different plot lines from there. It's just so much needless filler in one book, and it was so frustrating. Aside from the characters that are involved in the big battle, not many of our heroes or villains are all that intriguing or all that deep. Sam Kim is kind of built up as our main character. Well, really, he kind of shares the spotlight with Mara, I guess. But neither of them really have all that much personality. Mara is just a rebellious teenage daughter who wants to get away from her overbearing dad. Sam Kim is this troublemaker that doesn't really distinguish himself amongst the other roguish youngster characters from the rest of the series. And so their plot lines just didn't really have all that much going on, except for one very significant moment in the series: the deep coiler. You see, throughout their journeys, both Sam Kim and Mara encounter and befriend 2 different tribes of Gaussum shrews. Hooray! More meat shields to throw at the bad guys. And because the Gaussum shrews are riverboaters, we get this riverboating quest where the Gaussum are trying to find this lake, where an island out in the middle of the lake supposedly holds this ancient stone that is a symbol of their tribe. And so while they're out on the lake, our characters, our 2 separate factions of characters, have separate encounters with something called the deep coiler. Now, at first, I thought this thing was some kind of water snake, but it's described as having fins like a fish, so maybe it's an eel, but if so, it's a pretty big eel.
So I'm still just like, what the god Sam hell mother is happening here?
Regardless, it's this monstrous thing that lives in the lake, and so whenever the characters are out on the lake in these little log boats, the tension is building and building. There's just a lot of suspense in these moments where you're waiting for the deep coiler to strike and attack our main characters. And it was so much fun. It was this kind of Moby Dick adventure that had been thrown into Redwall. I really enjoyed those parts. But like I said, there is just a lot of fat on this bone here that could have been trimmed down. That plot line at Redwall Abbey with the sickness that's killing off these characters one by one is just utterly superfluous. I don't know why, but every time Brian Jacques includes an entry in the series that takes place after the founding of Redwall Abbey, he just has to shoehorn in some kind of storyline that takes place at the Abbey, even while all of these other adventures are going on. He just can't help himself. In Matameo, it was the storyline with the birds attacking the Abbey. In this one, it's a sickness attacking the Abbey. And either way, it just has nothing to do with the rest of the story. And if I was Jacques' editor, I would have eliminated those storylines completely. Like I said, it would have changed nothing but the bloated page count of this novel. Something else that I found pretty superfluous is the fact that our main villain, Farrago, has a son. One of the weasels that befriends Mara, the daughter of Lord Earthstripe, is named Vitch. And he is Farrago's real biological son. It's the first time in the series where we've gotten a villain who has a family, who's actually involved in the plot. And I was hoping that this would go in the direction of, a kind of comparison, a compare and contrast between Vitch and his father and Mara and her father, so she could see that, oh yeah, my dad's overbearing and strict and all that, but at least he's not like Vitch's dad. Vitch's dad hates his guts and orders him around. But there's not really a moment where we get to see that real comparison, and we don't really get a lot of depth with Vitch. He's kind of just another member of Farrago's army. It doesn't really seem like there was any reason to make them related in the first place. So yeah, it was a little bit of a disappointment, because I was expecting that particular plot line to go in a more interesting direction, and it kind of just didn't go anywhere. Okay, now I know it seems like I'm being really hard on this book, and I am, because when it comes to reviewing Redwall, I am trying to look past my nostalgia. I'm trying to take off those rose-tinted glasses and give these books fair, even-handed criticism. But let's be honest, I just loved this book. I'm coming to find that this is my comfort read series. I've had a lot of weirdly bad reading experiences so far this year. And so diving back into Redwall, I feel has done me a ton of good. No, Salamandastron is not the best written thing ever. There are parts that drag, and there are parts that don't make any sense, and there are parts that could have been eliminated entirely from the original manuscript and never even made it into print. But that said, when I flipped through this book, I was a kid again. I was sitting in my big plush lazy boy, which is actually where my bookshelf is now. I was bundled up in some blankets. I had a big mug of hot chocolate next to me, and I was just loving life all over again. This book took me to a place that I haven't been to in a long, long time, and I am very grateful for it, despite its shortcomings. And for what it's worth, I would absolutely recommend Salamandastron as an entry point into the series for those who have never read Redwall before. But that's just all my opinion. Let me know in the comments, guys. Have you ever read Salamandastron? What did you think of it? Whatever the case, I hope you'll join me in my next Redwall review when I cover Martin the Warrior. Not gonna lie, even though I remember that book being really good, I also remember it being very depressing. So we'll see. Until next time, guys, as always, farewell and keep reading.